you guys ready? All right, we'll call this February 10th, 2026 Essex County Board of Supervisors work session to order. April, you do a roll call, please?
Chairman Akers.
Present.
Vice Chairman Gill.
Present.
Supervisor Hale.
Here.
Supervisor Henry.
Here.
Supervisor Magruder.
Here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, first on our agenda tonight, gentlemen, we have an update for our financial advisors, Davenport. So we have Ben here from Davenport that's going to give us an update. I did ask Ben to also, for Supervisor Henry and Hale, just kind of give an overview of our policies and our limits and things that we set, just so it makes more sense as we get into that discussion.
Thank you. You know,
Max?
Ben, this is my favorite book.
You're
of
late.
the
We're not going to
year.
penalize you this time, but this is the last time.
This is good stuff.
You have a county library with this.
I have every issue for 10 years.
I think I do too. I don't like to go in one place.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. Usually you see my colleague Ted Cole up here, but he is not able to come tonight, so I'm taking over for him. This is something that I've worked on for several years now, so I'm very familiar with it as well. Like Rob said, you all have financial policies. They are included in this booklet as an appendix, but I'm really going to focus on the front section. I'm not going to go into the policies specifically, but we will cover the big topics that are in there.
And the reason, just to give the new board members some background, we adjusted that policy a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, to increase them a little bit. And what these policies really ensure is that we have enough cash on hand to cover things if we need to cover them, to make sure that we can, if we need to issue bonds, that we have some backing to be able to do that. And we've done a really good job of managing that. In fact, we've exceeded our policies kind of year over year, which is why we've increased it. But that kind of helps us understand how much money we can spend over how many years, and that's all going to be part of all this.
Yeah. So the policies have a lot of topics in them. I'm not going to cover all those topics. I'm going to focus on a couple, which Rob touched on there. Page numbers are in the bottom right. I'm going to flip to page 4. The policies were originally adopted in 2015. They were amended, and we have 2023, so you're right on with a few years ago. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of topics in there: budgeting, capital planning, audit reporting. But what I'm going to focus on in this presentation is your fund balance, which is essentially your reserves or your savings, and tax-supported debt. So debt that has already been issued or may be issued in the future, and some policies that you all have related to those. So,
And Ben, just so the board knows as well, the numbers that we've put in here, they are preliminary from our audit. So they are subject to change slightly as we get the final audit numbers, which we should have next month.
that's right.
But
Yep.
we've got preliminaries in here that should be pretty close. It's going to get us pretty accurate.
Yeah, and we're looking back 5 years, so we've got 4 years of audited figures and 1 year of that, not quite complete, but should be pretty close numbers. All right, so the first section here, page 5, I'm going to flip to page 6 actually. The county is not currently rated by any of the national credit rating agencies. You may hear about how some places are AAA or AA. You all don't have a rating, and you have not needed to get a rating. The rating is typically associated with bonds that are issued to individual investors in the public markets. You all don't have to do that because Virginia has a couple programs that you're able to access those interest rates without having to go through the whole process of getting rated and all that. We have provided for perspective in here, though, some comparatives to rated entities throughout the nation and in Virginia, just to give you some perspective on what those folks that have gotten rated, they may not be more creditworthy than you, but you just haven't needed to get a rating, but it gives you some perspective on what your metrics look like compared to them. Flipping to page 7, we do talk a little bit about how those rating agencies would rate you if you were to get rated. And the reason, even though you are not rated, that we include this here is that these cover some of the overarching topics that not just the rating agencies, but any lender that you go to will be looking at when they analyze your financials and determine if you're creditworthy and what the interest rate would be for you all. So I'm going to focus on the top left because it's a little bit simpler than the bottom left, but Moody's is one of those rating agencies. They break their rating into 4 different categories. They look at the economy, which they assign 30% to, financial performance, which includes your fund balance, the surpluses you may be generating from year to year, your policies, that kind of thing. They do care that you all have policies. Those are very good to show that you're thinking about these things ahead of time. Institutional framework is really just how counties in Virginia are structured, so there's not really anything to do there. And then leverage is looking at debt and pensions and other long-term liabilities that you may have. So again, not rated, but these are topics that would come up if you were to try and go borrow money from a bank or even from some of the state programs that you have access to.
Chuck, could you pull up that presentation on here that they've got? We're on page 7, probably getting ready to go to page 8 maybe?
Yep. And we can probably flip to
Or
page
9.
9 because page 8 is just a cover. 3 more pages.
General fund financial performance. There
Okay,
you
yeah,
go.
there you go, the next one.
One more, there
Thank
you
you.
go.
Perfect, thanks, Chuck.
Okay, so this page is really looking at what you all have done historically over the last 6 years. The top left here is showing your expenditures in the bars, so the green and the light green are your expenditures. The dark green is your annual operating expenditures, so that's like administration, public safety, that sort of thing. And then the light green is the debt service, so principal and interest that you're paying on existing loans or bonds that you have outstanding. The blue is the revenues that you're generating in the general fund, and you can see that 5 of those 6 years, the revenues have exceeded the expenditures on the bottom part of that. And the 1 year that they didn't, you can see the gold there is capital. So you were just using one-time funds in that year to fund some project which is no real concern from our perspective. That would be what one-time funds would be for. The fund balance is to fund a capital project of some sort. The bottom left looks at your general fund balance as a whole. Most of your general fund balance is considered unassigned, which means that it doesn't have a specific purpose assigned to it. There's varying levels of general fund balance, unassigned being the least restrictive. Non-spendable is on there as well. It's actually on that chart. You just can't really see it because it's so small. But there are other categories where if you had set aside money for some reason, it may be considered committed. You all don't have any of that. It's all pretty much all in the unassigned. So you can see the trend there. It has been increasing since 2020. It went down a little bit in 2024, but that's really associated with that gold bar on the top chart. So very strong operations that we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. Any questions on that before we flip to the next page? Okay. Page 10 is the next page we're going to look at here. This is just focusing on that fund balance, and this is where we're going to introduce the first of the policies we're going to look at tonight. This policy is associated with that unassigned fund balance, which you can see on line 1 of that big chart on the bottom has been growing the last few years. As of 2025, that unaudited number is 11.1 million. Your policy is that you want to maintain a minimum of 15% of your expenditures in that unassigned fund balance. And then you have a target over and above the 15% that your preferred target would be 18%. So 15 is the bare minimum, 18 is the preference, and you can see in the top left graph there that you all have exceeded that policy in each of the last 6 years. So you can see the little step up in the policy that Chairman Akers mentioned about changing that and increasing the requirement back in 2023, and you all have been above that requirement for all the years that we're looking at.
Yeah, we went for years with 12% as a policy minimum, And we were maintaining above that anyway, so we felt it was okay to go ahead and increase it to give us a little bit more of a buffer, and we've been able to stay within that as well, so,
Yeah.
or stay above it, really.
Right, and I think 15 is a very reasonable policy. It's something that you see in a lot of local governments around Virginia. I mean, really, the purpose of hanging on to those dollars is that you all are using that money in order to fund operations throughout the year. I mean, it's gonna get replenished. You only get tax revenues a couple times a year. It will get replenished when those tax revenues come in, but you need those dollars for the in-between times.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, it's about 6 million is what we've seen in the past. If we run into some issues where we may have to dip down into some of our unassigned fund balance for cash flow until the next set of tax books come in. So that can drop down pretty low, so you don't want it so low for that very reason.
Yeah, and there are some local governments that have to borrow money on a short-term basis to make the payroll and everything work. And that's something that's actually in your policy. If you look at the document in the back, it says you'll try to avoid that if you can. And this policy is one way of doing that. Is there any questions on that? The top right is that comparison that I mentioned to the rated entities throughout the nation in Virginia. I mean, you are right in line with a lot of those, so I think that looks pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, the good stuff.
All right, page 11 into page 12. All right, so this is looking at your existing tax-supported debt. So this includes debt that has been issued for schools, for county purposes, and then there are a few airport loans that the county makes payments on. And then in addition to that, there's a little bit of a Tappahannock water and sewer loan that you all are responsible for. In total, on the top right up there, you can see that you have $9,843,000 outstanding as of June 30th, 2025. The principal column is where you're paying back that par amount, the amount that's still outstanding. And then the interest column is a function of the interest rates of all the different loans that make up this portfolio. And we know those dollars exactly as they are. We know what the loans are. You don't have any loans that have a variable interest rate, so you're not going to get a surprise bill in 2 years that says, oh, your interest rate's increasing from 3% to 5%. That's not going to happen with any of the loans that you have outstanding. We have in prior years done some refinancings that have decreased those interest payments, and we do keep an eye on that, but there's nothing that we've identified right now that might be an opportunity for you to do that. The very last column in the top right there is your 10-year payout ratio. So that is another one of your policies, which you can see right below that table. Your policy says that you will target paying off 55% of the debt that you have outstanding in the next 10 years. So each year you're going to have a forward look and say, all right, how much debt are we paying off in the next 10 years? And what is that as a percent of all the debt that we have outstanding? Right now, your debt pays off in 2033. So all of your debt is going to be paid off in the next 10 years. So you have that 10-year payout ratio is at 100%. So you are in compliance with that policy, and unless you issue more debt, you're not going to have any issues with that. So that's your 10-year payout. If we flip to the next page, this is looking at another metric that's in your policies. This looks at the amount of debt that you have outstanding as a percentage of your tax base, or the assessed value of real estate in the county. The bottom table is showing year by year the debt outstanding by the different categories. Line 8 is that assessed value of real estate. That number we don't have for 2025 yet. That's been audited, so we just used 24 again. Presumably there's been a little bit of growth in that, so that would just improve the results here. But line 10 shows where your debt to assessed value has been the last 6 years. And your policy is that it will not be higher than 3%. And you have been below 2% for each of the last 6 years. And as of 2025, you're at about 0.5%. So what we like to describe this as is you have capacity within this policy to issue additional debt. So right now, you're at 0.5%, you could issue a certain amount and still be within that 3%. So there is the capacity to issue debt. What this does not address is the affordability, which is another side of it, and I'll get into that on a few pages from now. One note on this page before we flip, the top right, that comparison, you all, really the Virginia ones are a better comparison for you because most counties nationwide don't have schools. It's a separate school system. So you can see that the Virginia county debt is much higher than the national medians, and that's because a lot of the national ones do not have schools, so they don't have to take on debt like
From
you
the
all do.
previous slide, most of our debt payments are school-related debt
Yeah.
for the majority.
Yep, that's right. So you all are more in line with the national medians, even though the national medians mostly don't have schools in them. All right, page 14. This is the last debt ratio that is in your policies. What this one is looking at is your annual debt service payments as a percentage of your budget, essentially. Your policy is that you will target 10%, but the maximum it can be is 12%. You can see that in 2020 and 2021, you did approach that 12% level, but over the last 4 years, you have been comfortably below the 10% target that you have for that policy. So again, what we would consider this is that you have the capacity within this policy to issue additional debt. That doesn't necessarily mean you can afford to. Okay? So any questions on those policies before I'm going to flip to sort of that affordability that I mentioned? Good? I did want to make one more point before I flip to it, though, is that all of these policies, if you go back and read the document in the back of this presentation, they all have the ability to make exceptions. So if a big project comes up and the only reason you're not doing it is because my payout ratio goes to 50%, then you can make an exception for those policies. These are self-imposed. There's nothing within your policies that you technically can't change, but they provide a good guideline for future boards and for you all to make decisions going forward. All right? Okay, so page 15. This is the baseline for our affordability analysis that I'm going to show you on the next few pages. Working left to right. So column A, we've got fiscal years. We're starting with 2025. Columns B through D are essentially the requirements that you all have. Column B is your existing debt service. So that ties back to the prior page where we were looking at the existing tax-supported debt that you have outstanding. Column C is a placeholder for if we wanted to layer in some debt, which we're going to do a little bit here on a few pages. That's where we would put that in. And then column D is a sum of B and C. So that's giving you, all right, this is how much you have to pay from your existing debt and any proposed debt that's layered on top. The middle section, columns E, F, and G, are the revenues within your current budget that you have available for debt service. So column E is essentially the amount you had to budget in 2026 to make your payments. And column F is a subsidy that you receive from the federal government for one of the loans that you have outstanding. One of the loans that you issued back in, I believe, 2011 was a qualified school construction bond, which was a type of bond that the federal government has this program for where they essentially give you a subsidy every year for most of the interest on that loan. So that, you can see, goes out until 2031. That is because that bond matures in 2031. When it goes away, the federal government's going to stop sending you money for that. So really all we can count on going forward is that column E. You've already budgeted $2.2 million in 26 and 27. There is a little bit of a step down in 2028, and we're assuming that because those dollars are available today, they could be available in future budgets. Obviously, we are calculating a surplus in column H. That's just comparing the revenues and the requirements. And those surpluses, we're going to assume, could be used for debt service. However, it's totally up to your discretion what those surpluses get used for. Because you could just reduce the budget for debt service. However, this is one way to potentially capture some of that and be able to fund some larger projects that you may have.
And I'll just point out the footnote on the bottom here for the board, that at one time, I know when I first came on board, about a penny was about 120,000, 125,000. Now we're probably closer, it's probably a little more than this 140 now, it's probably closer to 145,
Right.
150, but every penny of tax, either up or down, is gonna impact our budget that way. So there's a way to think about that.
Right. And on this analysis in the next couple pages, that penny is not really going to play into this, but if we were to run any scenarios that you needed to say, all right, how much is this going to cost us? We typically will equate it to a penny, even if you find it a different way from a different revenue source or whatever. That's usually how we measure it to give you a little bit of a benchmark.
So you've used the current tax rate in moving these future years.
We have not done anything with the tax rate in this. All we've done is said, this is what you're budgeting in 2026 for debt service. We're going to assume that that's going to be available going forward because you're not going to have to find new revenues to make up for that. Okay? So I think we're going to flip to page 17. We've done an affordability analysis where we've said, okay, those surpluses on that prior page, how much money is available in each year, and what does that equate to if you were to issue debt that would be repaid from it? So we've assumed for the purposes of this that the debt would be repaid over 20 years at a 5% interest rate, with a few other assumptions for the timing of when you would make those payments, to be a little bit conservative. But if we flip to that next page, page 18, this gives you some perspective. So this is using that affordability model from that earlier page. Remember we had those surpluses. If you want to flip back to page 15, that column H, these are the surpluses. You got 16,027, 350,000, 775, and so on. So those are the dollars that we're using in this analysis, and we're saying, okay, how much could you issue if those dollars were indeed available? And you can see the incremental amounts are how much more you could issue each year, and then the cumulative just adds them up as you go along, because if you got to 2028 and said, well, we don't need that 8.4 million in 2028, we could wait until 2029 and issue 9.9 million. So it does build upon it, but if you were to issue on the earlier side, you wouldn't be able to then issue again. So that incremental is what you could do from year to year, and the cumulative just adds them all up. But you're looking at, over the next, call it 6 or 7 years, about 26 million of debt that could potentially be issued without having to find new revenue sources outside of your 26 budget.
And this right here doesn't calculate the unrestricted fund balance we have. This is just based on debt that we're currently paying that we could continue to pay if we want to pay it, so.
Yeah, so to the extent that you can take some of that fund balance and put it in and allow it to help with payments or to reduce the project amount that you're funding. Another couple assumptions that could change these numbers is that 20-year term. Again, if you extend that to 25 years, payments are going to be lower. You're going to be paying more interest over the life, but the effect of lowering those payments is that you could probably afford a little bit more than what we're showing here. And we see 25, 30 years. It just depends on the project being funded and what the useful life of that is. 5% is also high for the current market, but trying to be conservative in planning.
And with this summary you got here on page 18, if this was issued, we would still be within all of our policies as you previously listed.
Yes. Yeah, you would be. Yep. We don't
Maybe
actually,
not
I don't
by
actually
much.
have those in this book, but you would be with this amount of debt, you would be still in compliance.
Because we're paying the same amount that we're.
Right. So the debt to assessed value would increase. Like, obviously you're at like 0.5% right now with 10 million of debt outstanding. So you're at you add 25 million, you may be getting close to that 3%.
Yeah, we're getting close.
But again, this is happening over the course of 7 years, so you're paying back that 10 million, your tax base is growing at the same time. The debt service to expenditures, you would expect to be pretty much the same as what it was in 25, because we're just using the budget that you already have, so we're not assuming that the debt service payments are gonna go up, it's just we're using those surpluses in future years.
And the 5% is a market rate that you're projecting at this point for counties, localities?
5% is what we would consider to be a conservative planning rate right now. If you were to go out and do 20-year debt right now, if you were to get a bank loan, or if you were to go through the VRA program, you'd probably be closer to 4% right now.
So really, the only thing that would impact this more is if our revenues drop for some reason, like we had a major reduction, that would really impact our policies and position
Right.
that it has.
Yep, or if your assessed value decreased quite a bit,
Right.
or something along those lines.
There's always variables into it.
Yep. Yeah, and as you get further along in your planning, if you have specific projects that you'd like us to model up, we can do that. Or if you want some additional perspective, we can expand upon this analysis as well. This is set up so we can modify it and run some scenarios if that would be helpful for you. I think that's all I've got. Page 19 is just that affordability with the debt service layered in into column C. So that's column C is the debt service that's associated with the 25.7 million on the prior page. And really the check here is that column I never goes negative. If you hold your budget constant, you have the dollars to fund these amounts of projects.
Yeah, I know we worked with Ted and Ben early on. We were running some different scenarios. We were looking at our capital projects that were coming up, and that's what kind of why we were looking at, so you see in 2028, you could assume $8.4 million. We may or may not end up doing that depending on what projects are there, but if you only was a $5 million project for 2028, then you'd have that $3 million that rolls back over.
Yep.
So we're trying to place, if there's big projects that we knew that were coming on, like when the schools were talking about campus consolidation, for example, you can't do it all in 1 year because you don't have the revenue to do it unless you really start doing some borrowing, pulling from the reserves, but you can do it over a series of a few years to get that done without impacting the tax rate or potentially without borrowing any additional money than what we've already borrowed.
Potentially, yeah.
And if you use your reserves on top of that,
Right.
that would help.
Yeah, there are strategies for doing that. I mean, I do think the big takeaway from this is that you should not reduce your budget if you want these amounts to be available. So that budget for debt service, we're assuming stays the same into the future. Even if you're not using it, you may want to keep it constant just to maintain that affordability in future years, as opposed to letting it fall back into the general fund. But again, that's a policy decision, obviously. That's just an important assumption in this analysis.
So I think as we go through our additional capital planning, as we talk about our budget coming up, we can have numbers plugged into some of these as we look over the next 5 years and see what they are. I know we've kind of got the framework for that already.
Yep.
And so as we start approaching those, we'll bring those and be able to see what they look like.
All right.
Board members, any questions for Ben?
I do have another
Ronnie?
question.
Sure.
Thank you for this. This is always very helpful to see this on an annual basis. And I don't think it's any question the county is in a very strong financial condition here. So this is just a hypothetical question. Based on our strong financial wherewithal, what have you seen in the way of underwriting on these various issuances on these lenders? How much do they look at the affordability analysis when a loan application is made? Because sometimes they can loan you up and then we're stuck with the debt, right? So I was just wondering, I'm a credit person that's my background, and repayment ability is everything. So I just didn't know how much these underwriters look at that.
No, so it's a little bit interesting because typically the credit for these, the loans that the county would be making. If you're doing a school loan, you could do it through the Virginia Public School Authority, which would allow you to do it as a general obligation. That would be the security behind, which is essentially your ability to tax. So if you don't make the payments, they can step in and force you to increase your tax rate to make the payments. So a lot of times they are not terribly concerned about the affordability. From their perspective, you're gonna make it work. I mean, if you all were coming to them and said, we're gonna do a $200 million school, they might have some concerns. But I think as long as the project is not outsized compared to what your budget is, I don't think there would be a lot of concern with the financial strength that you all have from VPSA or from VRA. VRA, they wouldn't get that ability to raise your tax rate, but there would usually be some sort of asset that would be collateral. And then they also have this ability to intercept state aid, which is a huge credit factor for them.
It's like garnishing your wages, right?
Right.
That's what it is.
It's almost exactly like that. They look at you and say, all right, the state is sending you, just picking a number out of thin air, they're sending you $5 million for schools, and you need to make this $2 million payment on this loan, we're gonna take it out of that $5 million. So you would just end up with a budget hole somewhere else. So that is, it's important from your perspective to be comfortable with the affordability of the projects.
Thank you for that.
Some comments, Ben. I can go back 10 years when we had $48 million of debt, including principal and interest. So we have come a tremendous long way. We thank Davenport for their guidance, helping us refinance. That was great, but more importantly, it just shows you when things were as tight as they were and as difficult, when our tax rate was highest in the region, 86, 87 cents, 100, now we're down to 55. It just says a
53.
lot about the personnel we have in this county. The department heads really looked at their budgets and helped out there. And the services actually increased. They held their budgets, and we got this debt down. Now we can afford to do some things to make some improvements that we needed. Kudos to the staff, April, really. They made a world of a difference to be in the position we are today. So I just wanted to bring that out, and this just continues to show that. So one concern I have, and it may not have anything to do with the debt, is that the federal bill that's going to cut money to help with the social services programs and all is going to hit us hard. And it
Right.
doesn't look like the state is going to up that money. That's going to come from the county. Now, we can't service, that's a budget item. That's not coming under debt. It's going to affect us that way. So
Right.
will that affect these percentages and all that if all of a sudden, we're short of $500,000 is probably what is being projected that we're gonna have to put into our budget this year. And that's a 3-cent tax increase right there. Is that going to affect these ratios and get us into a position again where we're exceeding our policy?
So to the extent that you do not have revenues to fund that additional expenditure need, that would come from fund balance. So that, yeah, that would affect that unassigned fund balance that we were looking at. It doesn't sound like it's a necessarily an expenditure increase, it's a revenue decrease, you know? So the way we're doing some of these calculations, like unassigned fund balance and the debt service to expenditures, those are looking at your budget expenditures. So those aren't really gonna change materially from the perspective of calculating those policies. But yeah, I mean, it would affect your ability to afford this debt. It would affect that unassigned fund balance if you do have to dip into it. I think the idea would be that you don't want to dip into that unassigned fund balance
Not
to
for that
fund
purpose.
operations if you can help it.
You definitely don't want to do that, correct.
So,
Thank you.
so that would be the main thing is, that unassigned fund balance will just go down unless you find new revenues. And you eventually hit the point where you might have to borrow to make payroll and all that. So there's,
Don't wanna go there. We've been there. Don't
no,
wanna go
I
there.
get it. But that would be sort of the long-term effects if it's not addressed in the budget like it needs to be.
Well, the good news is, if you can call it good news, we're not alone in that situation. Everybody's
Yeah.
gonna face the same thing, so it's gonna be a statewide issue that,
I realize that.
Yeah.
I realize that, but if we need, for capital expenditures, I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't gonna affect that. I will say, not mentioning county names, but even in the current budget right now, several local counties are, in debt and are struggling to meet this year's budget, let alone, I can't imagine what they're gonna go through next year. So again, kudos to staff, here in Essex County for knuckling down years ago, and they paid the price hard, but it's really paying off today, that we don't have to go through this. So where they may have to lay off people or cut budgets or whatever, hopefully we won't have to get into that situation, so, because we are financially very well sound. Thank you for your report.
because what are we dropping, Ben, in debt service each year, roughly?
You can actually kind of see that back on 15.
15, so,
It looks like 2 million just in this one year coming up.
So you mean how much are you paying off each year, or how much
Right,
does the
yeah.
payment decrease?
how much
each
does
year?
the payment decrease, so how much are we saving? I
So yeah, if you look at page 15, column H is essentially how much your debt service is decreasing. There is 1 year where we have the budget decreasing from 2.2 to 2.0, from 27 to 28. So from 26 to 27, it goes down by about 17 grand. From 27 to 28, your debt service goes down by about 500 grand, but we have your budget decreasing because what's being paid off in 27 is that water and sewer note that I think we, through some conversations, have decided is sort of outside the realm of this debt service budget that we are looking at.
I guess to John's point is that, assuming we didn't assume any new debt, that $500,000 impact wouldn't be as hard of an impact, because we're gonna pay less on our debt service than,
We could absorb it.
We can
through
absorb
savings
more of it.
In the debt service. I think y'all have always done this, but you monitor the rates, and if there's any savings to refinance any of our debt,
Yep.
You'll let us know pronto, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we will do that. And I mean, each piece of debt that you have is in the appendix as well. Starting on page 22, it goes through a couple summary tables, and then once you get to page 26, you start seeing each individual one. And I think the takeaway from these is that they're either so close to maturity that any savings that you would be able to get would be made up for in the costs associated with doing the refinancing, or they are loans that you're not allowed to prepay, or you're getting some sort of subsidy for. So I think right now your debt portfolio is in a position where there's not really any opportunities to refinance for savings without extending the maturity.
I don't think rates will drop down real favorably where refinancing wouldn't probably make any sense. But if that did happen, do we have any penalties for refinancing any of this debt, other than the ones that, maybe the leases you can't do that, but,
So each one has, well, these are all sort of at the discretion of the lender. So
Okay,
I don't
alright,
think,
that's fair.
I don't think any of them have like a penalty per se. but-
everything's negotiable then, right?
You're right, like VPSA and VRA, you can go to them and say, I would like to refund this, and they can say no.
Right.
So, and the VRA, there's only 2 years left, and you've actually already made the
You're paying principal
2026
anyway.
payment.
right,
That payment was back in October. And then the VPSA ones are like those subsidy loans that you can't really do anything with those because they were given to you back then at below market interest rates, and they basically said, we don't want you to pay this off because it's below market.
Okay.
But yeah, you definitely, if you issue new debt, that would,
It's good to know for new debts.
yes, yeah. But pretty much everything you have right now is about as low as it can get.
I agree.
Board members, any other questions for Ben? Ben, I appreciate it. Thanks for the
course.
update. I'm
Yeah,
sure
no
we'll be in
problem.
touch as we start working through our budget to get some other numbers crunched for us.
All right, sounds good. Thank you
Appreciate
all.
it.
Have a
Thank you,
great
man.
evening.
Appreciate it.
All right, next we have VDOT. Do we have anybody from VDOT?
We'll move him to our regular meeting if he
Maybe-
shows up then.
Maybe the roads are too icy? Just saying, maybe.
It was 55 degrees in there.
Okay. All right, well, Nita, we'll bring you up on the proposed 26-27 budget calendar.
Good evening, Chairman, board members.
Evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to present the proposed budget schedule for your consideration this evening. I'm hopeful that you've had a chance to review it.
I did have one conflict on the 21st, and if the board would be willing and able to move it to the 20th or the 22nd, I'd appreciate it.
I'm letting mine load up. Hang on a second. Oh, it's up over here.
Well, preferably the 20th. 22nd is a PDC meeting, but
Which stage, which,
We're talking March.
April.
Oh, okay. all right.
421, if we can move it to 420.
There has to be 7 days in between the hearing and the adoption,
Okay,
so I think 20 might be a conflict.
all right. 23rd then? So it doesn't conflict with the PDC meeting? It's a Thursday?
or we could break, oh, that's our regular meeting is the 14th, then, for the public hearing. Yeah, I'm okay with the 22nd or both those, 22nd, 23rd, I'm good either day.
Preferably the 23rd. I said we have a PDC meeting that night, but on the 22nd, so it'd be the 23rd if that's acceptable.
Yeah, the 22nd's not real good for me, but 23rd is.
February 23rd, I'm gonna be out. That doesn't mean that you guys can't have it, but I won't be here on the 23rd. I'll be out of town the 20th through the 28th. But you guys probably need to meet with the constitutional officers to keep that.
That's also capital night, so I don't know if you want to look at another date or just leave it to the remaining members.
Yeah, it's really up to the board. I mean, I could do I could do the 19th, or I could do the, or I could do the 2nd of March. Or like I said, I mean, it's no problem for you guys to have it. I mean, you'll have, as long as you have enough members. That looks like that's my only bad date.
Are we looking at the 2nd of March?
If that'll work for everybody, it doesn't push us out too far.
I'm sorry, for the adoption would be, oh, okay.
He-
The separate, okay.
We jumped back to February.
Okay.
So I don't think we've resolved April yet.
I'm
but
not,
Okay,
we're not
I
gonna be
lost-
done that quick.
Sorry, I lost track of
We've
it.
jumped back to February, so
Done
he
it
is the chair,
chronologically.
so I just was waiting my turn. I'm fine either 19th or the 2nd, doesn't matter to me.
The 19th's not good for me.
Y'all wanna plan on the 2nd?
The 2nd of March,
I can't do the 19th.
Instead of the
Oh, that's
23rd.
So let's say March the 2nd.
Okay.
March 2nd instead of February 23rd.
yep.
Okay?
The rest of my days should be good.
All right. So going back to the April, Joe, you said you did have a conflict on the 23rd?
I can change that again.
23rd of what?
April.
April.
Back to April now.
All right.
That okay, Calvin?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. And you can move, Joe? I appreciate that. All right.
Does 7
Okay.
o'clock work, or?
7 o'clock on Thursday, the 23rd is fine.
Okay. So April 23rd instead of April 21st.
Gina will get calendar invites to us. Okay.
We'll get all the reminders.
Thank you all.
And then May 11th, I'm good with May 11th as well. Although we don't have to do anything for that, do we? May
No, that's
11th.
the school
We
board.
just want to make sure they adopt after we do,
Right,
since we started that with them a couple of years ago.
correct.
So they're trying to force you to adopt something that you haven't agreed to.
So on the 23rd, we'll be adopting our budget. That's the
Right.
plan. Barring no
Good
other.
with the date, no, you will adopt that tonight. Make sure you like the date.
Don't have any choice.
That's right, your choice.
Change that to the second, then.
Any
All right.
other questions?
Yes, sir.
Didn't they change 23rd to the second?
We
They
changed,
February the 23rd to March 2nd.
Right.
And April the 21st to April the 23rd.
Third, yeah, I got it.
Are you good with those, sir?
I got it.
All right.
I got it now.
So you'll
everybody else
adopt
good with
it.
everything else? So
Can
at
can
our-
I ask one question? Are we meeting jointly with the school board? Was that,
We were advised if they asked for a session, because this board advised us they'll be funded using ADM and the council with categorical funding twice a year. So unless they ask for a session, that's how we drew up the calendar.
I think a lot depend on their budget, what they
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
up with.
I
If
mean,
there's-
it would be added on a different day, obviously,
Right.
but it's not in here.
It's not
And that gets
Correct.
signed.
as of now.
In that scenario, I could see if it was something that there's a request that exceeds out, for whatever reason, the RLE, RLM, they need to ask for some additional for, that wouldn't be part of those numbers that we're pretty much obligated to give anyway. Then we would just have to schedule something in.
I think in previous years, we've met in like late March, if I'm not mistaken.
And they could certainly do it on the 24th of March if we needed to do that, or any other special need.
I know we'll have some, the chairman of the school board sent us out, I don't know if you saw it, Ronnie, a request for, so I know we're gonna have quite a few committee meetings leading up to that, so we can
We
kind
can-
of,
we can discuss.
we kind of feel that out as it comes along to see if we need to add anything else in. All right, well, then we'll bring this back up, if everybody's comfortable with it, we'll bring it back up for at the regular meeting for adoption.
Very good.
Thank you,
And
Nita.
I was just wondering if you wanted to discuss Edmonds
We can.
or not?
Yeah, no, we can do that.
I believe there had been previous discussions of centralized services' desire to move the school's financials from RDA to Edmonds, which is the system that the county currently uses. And we were hopeful that last night the school board would have discussion about it, but it did not make it into their time constraints, so.
Yeah, I talked to Jamie, their chair, and they had some questions, which is part of what prompted another committee meeting regarding Evans. Just a lot of them just don't have the history or any of that that's there. And just an understanding of the cost differences and all that. I think there's just some general questions that we need to have, and probably at some point have somebody from Edmonds meet with the school board to explain more of the mechanics that are involved in it, because we don't know that, nor do we really care about those mechanics too much, as long as it works. But I know it's coming as part of our audit report, that is a recommendation from our auditors to consolidate those services. I know it's gonna make it easier for certainly our treasurer and reconciliations to have everything on one system, and easier visibility for everybody, and cross-training as well. It's nice for everybody to be able to see everything. And I think it's also going to eliminate a lot of unnecessary bolt-on or add-on type services that the schools have, and quite frankly, that we have too. Nita and I were talking about that last night, that, there's things that we pay for in Edmonds that we really ought to start utilizing, the payroll function being one of those. So we're looking to find some efficiencies with it, but also get some economies of scale. I think the cost, if I'm not mistaken, for the schools for Edmond was about, it might have been a little bit more for the actual software, but it was a lot less money on the support side of it. Am I
Correct.
correct with that?
Correct.
to where you,
It's very comparable
you would
to
net out a
to what's
savings at the end
current,
of the day.
but the support is drastically different.
Yeah, so you would net out a savings at the end of the day, so it would be efficient. Plus, you'd probably do away with frontline because you'd use the payroll
Yes,
and all
there-
those systems. And
Abilities in Edmonds that are not available in RDA.
so, yeah, I think we'll be able to answer some of those questions and the purpose behind that when we have our committee meeting. I guess what I was hoping that we would have, I was hoping that the school board may have taken some action last night, but it's okay that they didn't. But what I want our board, if we are in agreement, is that we agree that we want to have staff work on that process to start to integrate Edmonds, because it's going to be at least a 12-month process to get that all transitioned. So I'd like to have our part done, so when the school board's ready, we can pull the trigger and go. And you're talking to April, and I get if we're doing the finances, we should be able to, you have say in the software that we're using, but it's just going to make a lot more sense no bigger than our county is, to have a common system.
It just makes sense to do it.
So I'm confident that's the direction we're gonna end up going in. I think we just have to have some more discussions. I don't foresee anybody on our board having any major issues with it, because I think it's gonna save money.
Yeah,
Will save money.
just to, I guess, recap, you're looking at significant cost savings. You're
Correct.
looking at efficiencies.
Correct.
Teachers will be paid twice a month instead of once a month, and I know that was a very strong concern of theirs, because it's hard to budget a whole month of salary, you know. It's nice to get paid every 2 weeks, it's a whole lot better. This way, the transparency is gonna be there and all that. So we have all these pluses, and they did not decide this last night?
They didn't have it on their agenda for discussion. I know they discussed it at their meeting, but they didn't have on their agenda to take any action on it.
Because this is something that we've been talking to them for a very long time. Am I missing something?
Now, and I think, you know, with
I
the,
think the new school board members just need to get acclimated to it. And we've discussed it in our school finance committee meetings, and so I'm hopeful that it will come.
and I think with it coming out in the audit report, I think that's the key thing for me. If your auditors are telling you,
Because it's gonna save on that too, because it'll be streamlined better that way as well. So I see all these pluses, and I'm really having a hard time here, folks, but, all right, that's me. I'll just leave it at that. The other thing is there, what kind of time frame? If this is gonna take a year, you know, I don't want this to drag on somebody else's side, you know, when we need to move forward. Again, if we've got to come up with $500,000 for social services, because these are the types of things that I look for to make things more efficient, save tax money, to be able to put money back into giving services to the community. Am I missing something here?
Yeah,
And
I-
Anita, I'm not directing
No,
this
no,
at
no,
you
no,
at
sir.
all.
No,
This
sir.
has nothing to do with you. You're doing a great job. Thank you. I'm just confused, so.
yeah, and the timeframe taking so long is so they can run the systems in parallel for a good
I
period of time.
understand that part of it, but to initiate it to the go point, you know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the
know,
go point be more logical to begin on a fiscal year, July 1?
The sooner we can begin, because they have to obtain the data for like 3 years' worth of data from RDA, and then they have to convert that data to run into their system. And then they have to upload it, and that's a good 6 months from my understanding, talking to them. And then we get trained on it, we check everything, system to system, check it, make sure it's correct at that point in time, while still continuing to work in the other system, and then run those systems parallel for at least 2 months, just to make sure everything is working properly and pulling the historical information that we rely on.
Because we're working in parallel, then we could start anytime, is what you're saying.
We could start anytime, sooner is always better
I
to
understand.
initiate.
And do we have a breakout of what the migration cost is versus the software cost versus the ongoing support?
We do,
Because the ongoing support and whatever, you know, cost of the software is, that would be operational, but the migration piece of it, that should really be a capital, because that's kind of a one-time
there
deal.
is, the conversion fee for 3 years of data is $14,000. And then there is $12,000 for training for all the different modules, which would include the school people who would be using purchasing and their pieces of the software that integrate with our finances. And then after that, it's the subscription, the annual subscription, and the hosting fee to host all those, all that data in the web. And then Edmunds does not charge anything for support, and RDA charges $500 an hour for support when we call.
I'm in the
Yeah,
wrong
because that
business,
last,
gentlemen.
because that last year was, I think you put it in the cost, what was the cost of the
I
support
did.
last year, $60,000?
It was $35,000 that we paid in support since last year, like in the calendar year of '25. The schools paid $35,000 in support, which was as much as, actually, it was a little bit more than what the annual fee to use the software was.
Right.
So that would save in efficiencies, obviously. And then the modules are integrated in Edmunds, which lets you pull information from all of them, as opposed to RDA, where it's just siloed and you can only get payroll information or vendor information. And then you have to manually build a report to include what you want.
There's no penalty to get out of RDA, is it?
I believe they have a 60-day notice,
Okay.
but I think it was last renewed in 1st of November, so.
And we'd have plenty of time within that
Oh,
60-day
yeah,
notice
yeah,
as
we
we're
give them 60
testing everything out.
That won't be.
Because I'd even mentioned that probably when you start with this new is you minimize some of the GL codes and clean up a lot of that mess that probably for years and years has just been added on just to get some of that cleaned up. I mean,
What are we
and
waiting
we're
for?
probably guilty as well of needing stuff that needs to be cleaned up, probably a lot of GL
Sure.
codes that probably don't get used anymore, but I know the schools have quite a
We
bit.
look at it each budget year and either create new ones or consolidate those that no longer make sense to have.
Right.
So that's something we already do.
So it sounds like our board's definitely in favor of moving forward.
Do we need to
and-
make a motion at our regular
I don't
meeting
think
for
we-
this, or
I don't know that
give
we need to make
direction,
them-
or?
Do you need a motion for us? I don't think we need a,
We have conflicting approaches to the admins.
Max is just an opinion.
I don't know, there's an argument for when you pay someone to provide a service, you also don't tell them what system to use to provide the service.
Right.
Especially when you're funding the payment for the service that they've already said doesn't work for them.
Yeah, I mean, we could push this. I think they're gonna come to that realization. And once we have this committee meeting, I think that'll make it
I think
a
so.
lot
Give them
clearer.
some time, but that does push their issues a little further down the
Right.
road.
And
Well-
They
I'm
need to be aware of that.
I'm fine with that they need time, I totally get that, but how much time?
Well, I think,
Your time is your money. So-
Exactly.
think-
This is the taxpayers' money.
We'll make that point clear. We're scheduled to have a meeting
Before the
sometime
end of
this
the
month,
month?
yeah.
so I would expect that a decision would be made in March, that we would have a green light to go in March to start things, so.
Thank you, Anita.
Sure. Any other questions?
Then you really get busy.
Thank you.
I'm not?
I said, then you really, really get
Yeah.
busy.
Either decisions that can be part of the budget.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you know,
True. That's
it
what
is,
we're looking
that's why it's important,
Yes.
so, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Nita. All right, next, we have a BZA reappointment. April, this was,
I'm sorry, just read a message from BoardDocs. We're here for the 7 o'clock meeting.
we might let him on then.
Gina, the
See.
BCA?
Yeah, so we have to, y'all have to petition, basically give a directive for the people to petition the court to reappoint, Ed Vito for the BZA.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that in the regular meeting?
It's really a function of the BZA to ask the circuit court to make the appointments, but yes, if you all want to adopt a motion directing us to petition to have that happen, that's as simple as it would need to be.
Okay,
That's what we want to do.
so we'll just bring that to our regular meeting. Is that on the agenda for the regular meeting, do you know?
Yes.
Huh?
It will be.
Yeah.
They're good.
It's not, but we can add it.
It's fine, just so we can add it when we
Yeah, we'll add it.
go over our agenda.
Very good.
All right. Easy enough. So with that, we have the Rotary Poorhouse Park, the EDA. So Lisa, you have the floor.
Those maps right there, for you guys to look at while the presentation's going.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. For those who don't know me, I'm Lisa Andrews. I'm the chair of the Essex County Economic Development Authority. Our executive director, Woody Walker, is attending Chesapeake Gateway's Community Conference, so he couldn't join us tonight. I know sorry he can't be here. Also, Kay Carlton, who's been very instrumental in helping us develop the Rotary Poorhouse Park conceptual plan. She had to step out and take over the pickleball programs tonight, so she's got more on her plate than ever. I also want to share with you briefly, though I'm not going to go into it. I'll give it to April. I prepared a summary of the major programs that the EDA has embarked on since adopting our strategic plan just 15 months ago. As you recall, we hired Woody Walker about 14 months ago, and I think we have done a lot in a short period of time. But if you'd asked me 15 months ago, would Rotary Poorhouse Park be one of our top projects, I would have said, I don't think so. That is a huge undertaking. But with your support and your input, we have developed a conceptual plan for Rotary Poorhouse Park by engaging the consulting firm TRC. I'm pleased that Greg Smith, a professional engineer whose team and he have worked very hard and taken into consideration a lot of input from some of you. April had some great comments, Mr. Magruder, Mr. Henry, as well, and we got feedback from Parks and Recreation, the Sheriff's Department, as well as the as EMS and others. So since Mr. Smith presented in December, those contributions have been incorporated into the plan, and a lot more meat is put on the plan, but I want to emphasize, this is a conceptual plan. This is the start. We're nowhere near the end. We need a lot more development, a lot more studies, and importantly, we need community input, and we asked the Board of Supervisors to kind of take the lead in organizing some meetings with the community to get their input. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Greg, who can delve into the details, and you can ask him all the questions. I will say it's kind of daunting to come up for a project like this after you've had a budget discussion. So we will be looking for funding sources other than your deep pockets, but be prepared. So,
The budget's a dynamic thing, that's what it is.
thank you, Greg. Good to see you.
So thank you for that introduction. So yes, I'm Greg Smith from TRC Engineers out of Richmond, formerly Draper Aid and Associates. So we've been working with Woody for about 6 months now, maybe a little bit longer. I think we were out at the site in June. So as Ms. Walker said, we've been working with Woody and Skip as well, and Skip was not able to be here tonight either, Skip Weiss. So we've been working with Woody and soliciting input from you all. We've addressed in the report that you may have digitally, part of that is the back where we have addressed the comments. So the report is organized by the multi-page report where we go into the history, some of the constraints, some of the opportunities, and then we've attached an appendix for the budget, the budget, the cost estimate, and an appendix where we responded to the county comments. So. We won't go through the report. I think maybe what we'll do is, and you should have some 11x17 color copies in front of you. There were 6 sheets of the 11x17s, and then we have three copies of 3 sheets of the large format, which are over there. So without further ado, why don't we jump to figure 6. So in the bottom right corner of the sheets that you have, you'll see the figures are numbered. If you turn to number 6, that is the concept plan itself. And as Ms. Andrews said, we looked at different options. Keep going. And keep going. Getting there. We may be actually missing them because they may be scrolling so fast it's not loading that quickly. If you go clear on the right bottom right, you'll see the, so that's the phasing. That's, I believe that's 8. So go back 2. The PDFs are pretty large, so they take a while to load. There we go. So if you could zoom extents there or keep it zoomed in, that's entirely your option. So if we could navigate over clear to the far right, close to, over to Kino Road. There we go, and go ahead and go up sheet all the way to the top. Okay. So what we've tried to do, and with the solicit from the county, we know there's some needs and desires for athletic facilities. So this is a 700-acre parcel made up of 2 parcels. So you're very land wealthy with this land. What we tried to do is focus the formal portions of the park closer to Kino Road, thinking you'll have the opportunities for tournaments for baseball and soccer. And at that point, we even focused that as like phase 1 of the project, because we envision this to be a multi-phase, could be multi-decade improvement of this park, depending on funding goes. So we tried to focus the biggest portion of the formal park close to Kino Road. So what that does is that allows folks that are bringing their kids to tournaments or to games, they don't have to go deep into the park. They get to the majority of the accesses right there off Kino Road. We know there's a need for basketball, so we put basketball into this first phase, and that's a pretty small footprint, so that's not that expensive. But the biggest opportunity in my eye of the park is the natural features of the park. The topography, it's wooded, it goes down to Piscataway Creek. There's so much opportunity of this park. So we'll get to the phasing here in a minute. But as you see, if you zoomed out of the whole park, we tried to keep most of the improvements to the east and more natural, undeveloped portions to the west. So an advantage of that economically is you don't have to build a major roadway all the way to the rear. You're trying to keep that all the way to the front. Now, we did show a series of soccer fields in the middle of the park. That, according to the records we have, was a borrow area for the landfill, meaning the soil was stripped from there and used to cap the landfill, which is that that light orange area kind of in the middle there. So we thought that area is a little bit flat. We'll put soccer fields there. Now, maybe that's a different type of soccer. Maybe it's youth in the front and more older kids in the middle. So that's the kind of programming we'll develop as we get through the design. So there's a lot on here to digest. I hope you did have a chance to look at this a little bit. There are constraints, just like any parcel. For here, there's floodplain to worry about. There's wetlands. That's the green throughout the park. Not the ball fields themselves, the darker green. There's wetlands, and so what we did is there's many online mapping resources we have access to, and we use that to develop the portion of the map, as you can see in green, that's wetlands or areas that we have to formally study to show that they are there. So that would be something in the future to verify they're there. And there's going to be trade-offs no matter what we develop. So for example, we've been calling it a loop road. It's a road that accesses more or less circular around the park, and you can spoke off from there to the different areas of the park. Well, that loop road, it's going to probably go through wetlands, so there may be some permitting involved in there. Well, an alternate may be to go through the landfill, but you don't want to disturb the cap on the landfill. So there's going to be some back and forth on where we can go and maybe environmental impacts that we have. But we'll certainly work with staff to figure out the best way. So this is a great start, as was mentioned, and this would be a way for us to look at the vision of things to develop into this park. We did develop a cost estimate for all the phases. We have 5 phases right now. Again, that's very subject for discussion. About $26 million in today's money. We did prorate that, extrapolate that, excuse me, over the next 10 years, just to see, you know, how funding might go. And what the preferences might be when we actually move into formal design stage. One of the things we can think about, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, is from this point forward, we could look at doing more formal due diligence to develop a constraints map. While this is conceptual based on online information, the next step could be we do a formal survey of the property. So the question then would be, what area do you want to survey? Do you want to survey it all? Well, you could. If you think you're going to develop this park in a couple years, it might be more efficient to survey the whole parcel. If you think this will be spread out over 10, 20 years, let's just survey the area we think we're going to develop first. And the same argument could be made for the environmental constraints, the wetlands. If you don't think you're going to be getting into the more western portions for 10, 15, 20 years, don't worry about that now. We can focus just on the areas that we think we can do in the first 5 years, give or take. So we can look at that.
Greg, on that point.
Yes.
It was in the plan,
Mhm.
and it was one of the things I picked up on. If we were to do a study of, say, the wetlands
Mhm.
as a constraint or whatever, that 10, 20 years from now, if we finally get to that area, are there gonna be changes?
Yes,
Okay, that's why I
exactly.
wanted to make sure, so that we don't jump ahead too far.
Yep.
That we cause problems and have to redo, we might as well not do it then. Okay,
Exactly, that's the balance we're looking for, and
Okay.
these studies have shelf lives.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
wetlands, you know, it could be 5 years and you would want to do it again.
Okay.
So that'd be one thing. There's a lot of tree clearing that would be involved, right? That's something you may have to stomach, right, for the development of the park. But we tried to look at areas like where the soccer field's in the middle and where the landfill are. The trees really aren't that great there, but you know, it's a wonderful property, right? So it's a matter of balancing the development with what may have to be lost in the way of the woods.
So Greg, did you guys consider, because I noticed that on here early on, about moving that transfer station up closer to Kino? It doesn't really make sense to have trucks and people going to take trash driving through your park if we could relocate
Yeah,
it.
so we talked about that with Woody. We looked at potentially having the access road for the transfer station come from the west. So that'd be something to look at. There wasn't an opportunity to relocate it. So we left it where it was. That is an opportunity to move it to somewhere else, because you're exactly right. Having those vehicles come in that aren't using the park per se to get to the transfer station may not make a lot of sense, but that is an expense that has not been considered.
Well, and it was, one of the reasons why they closed the gate to that park right now is they want to prevent people from driving back through there and dumping off trash when the transfer station's closed. So that's why the gate's up toward the front of the road, which will still get people that want to drop off trash there.
Yeah.
But the only way to prevent from closing that off would be to move it up closer so you're not blocking off your park
Yeah.
if they want to have the transfer station closed. No, but it's a lot to take in. I mean, it's long overdue, a program like this.
So I'm happy to keep talking, but if you have any questions, it's an exciting project, and it's neat to be involved in something, starting from scratch. This is awesome.
When you were looking at the erosion control and drainage and stormwater management and all that, were those just, what was just those, the grading, like erosion control, drainage, the grading, we're talking about $600,000 just with those?
It is, and
things.
so that's just like I mentioned, maybe some of the phasing or some of the efficiencies for surveying and environmental constraints studies, things like that. Earthwork would be something similar. Do we want to disturb a bigger piece and just do mass grading of a big chunk of the park? Do we want to just do the ball fields? Do we want to just do the amphitheater? Things like that. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth on how to actually develop these phases formally. So the more you clear, that's more land disturbance, that's more erosion control. You have to put in more stormwater controls you have to put in. And then there's more restoration, things like that. So this is such a great opportunity to have those discussions on where the priorities will be, where the funding could help you with this, and that would really help project this phasing roadmap that we're gonna.
We had talked about at one time, damming off an area in there and creating like a large pond or some kind of lake or something like that. It would seem to me like you would want to take into account everything, whatever you're gonna build for stormwater management, you build it with that kind of pond in mind, because my guess is that would be part of your.
So, yeah, so the way, and how it's shown on here now on the left side of the sheet, there's a red star there. That's something we looked at as potential fishing area, small pond. I think what you're speaking of is more of a regional stormwater facility that we could make it a wet pond. It stays wet all the time, and that might be an opportunity
Right.
for, a recreational facility like fishing.
Okay.
Couple questions, Greg. We definitely need to have some public sessions, okay? And to kind of go over, not necessarily looking at it from a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 scenario, but what would the public like to see us focus on of these amenities and what makes logical sense? Get some input there, and then we can consolidate and create a phase 1. And I understand why you did and what you did, and that's fine. This begins to get the ideas turning for people. So that, I know you read in the report that that's something that the county would initiate and do. Then the notes from that go back to you? Do you sit there as part of the listening sessions? What is your involvement at that point?
So we haven't defined that yet with,
Okay.
with Woody. It can be any and all of that.
Okay.
We could be active participants, we could be sitting in the back, we could not attend. However, the board wants to approach that.
For parks that have, or people that have done similar stuff to us, just that, how did they handle it? Or
So,
we
right.
can- if you tell me who, we can go talk to them. It doesn't
Sure,
matter to me,
sure.
so.
So we can, there's firms that we can engage for the park design, like a specific ball field, right? So if this is gonna be sanctioned Little League field, right, we have to make sure that that fulfills their requirements. One of the things that we'll have to work with Park and Recs or y'all is the number of ball fields. If you're gonna have potential tournaments, well, what's the right size to build? Is it, as we shown here, I think we have 8. Is it, maybe it's 28, right? Maybe it's only 4. Those are the kind of things that have to be defined up front, so we can then put pen to paper and get that designed. It's what's the goal? Is it to host 14 and under? Is it Little League? Is it whatever? That's the kind of goals we'll have to get feedback from the county, and that way we can tailor the design to that
Right.
particular facility.
And that's what I'm hoping with the public input,
Yep.
I can definitely say that is the most important thing.
Yeah, and,
Baseball
I
fields.
think Kay's comment about the basketball, she said there's a great need for basketball, so we were able to put that
Right,
on there.
sure. Sure. I like the ideas, like all the ideas out there. And the other question would be the funding options that were listed. I know that's not the be-all, end-all list, but it's a good start in the list. Just trying to get a timeline in my head. Do we want to do the public input sessions first, and then do the funding options, then the plans, or, because some of these things need to be done way ahead of time.
Yeah,
Just some of the programs that were listed here that I'm familiar with. You're
Right.
talking about a year-long process.
Yeah, whoop, just fell asleep. So, yes, that could stretch out, and I don't think you're gonna get every funding, every grant you ask for either.
Oh, I know
right?
that too.
So.
But we're gonna try.
Yeah. So it might be worth soliciting feedback, but, having more, maybe at the director level feedback, because they know the programs they may want to attract. The public is going to have 100 new ideas. right? Are you gonna, do you have the stomach to do all 100? Do you have the stomach to do 5 of them? You know, that's up to you. So I don't know that I can define that for you. I just know that the 100 ideas the public comes up with may be the best ideas that are out there. We don't know. But I think you need to help define what your goals are for this property before I think you open it up to that.
Okay.
I have a couple comments, and I know this is probably more in the weeds, because this is still conceptual, but as far as your baseball and softball fields, and there should be baseball and softball, and I think you already alluded to that in your comments earlier, the field size, it looks like the clover leaf, I thought they were probably, might be the 200-foot fields, but we'll need 300-foot fields too. We need it to accommodate all ages of sanctioned baseball and
Okay.
softball.
Okay.
And I know this is still conceptual, but, and it probably could be increased, but I wonder whether looking at the size, the scope here, the parking areas, especially for the baseball, softball, that may need to be bigger than what you've got drawn here.
Sure.
That's very possible, I think.
Yeah,
right?
very much.
Yeah.
Yes, because we also think it's going to be a shared use, right? If there's an event at, let's say, the amphitheater, it might be busy on this day where it may or may not be staggered when the tournaments are, right?
Right,
So,
right, yeah.
yes, we'll need to look at that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate everything that you've done here. This is a lot of moving pieces to this, no question about it.
Else have any questions?
Good?
All right, we're good.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate this. So Lisa, when's your thought about you having some of these public discussions?
I would hope that we could have some, begin that process this spring. Kind of get the word out. We've already got some coverage in the paper. You know, how they're gonna be formatted, it needs to be determined. I know in December, Kay had suggested that we have 3, maybe one on the weekend, one in the evening, one in the daytime, so that people, depending on their work schedules. I personally think it would also be smart to do kind of an online poll, and we might be able to get some input that way from folks to assess. And but in terms of timing, I do think that the Board of Supervisors needs to help guide us, and Parks and Recreations, Kay Carlton and her people, they're probably ones that should be running it. We're trying to manage the consulting side of it and move it forward in that respect, but, you know, Kay is already hearing from the public. They're coming in, they're looking at the map that's up in her office. There is keen interest. And, you know, everybody's excited, I want this, I want that, and soccer is really growing in popularity. Kay told us at our meeting last week that there are as many kids playing soccer now as there is baseball, softball, which surprised me. We always think about softball, baseball around here, but soccer has really become popular. And that was, so I'm kind of putting it back in your court as to when we should move forward.
Well, we could, certainly, I mean, going through the budget, probably adding any additional meetings is probably not ideal while we're right in the middle of the budget, but certainly right after that.
Very well, let's aim for
And
that.
I like the idea of a poll too. I think if you list out the different pieces that we have, and then just have the community come back and kind of rank them, top choice versus last choice, and just rank them down, that would give us kind of, to John's point, kind of where are we starting from? What's the biggest request, the biggest need, especially if you can't do them all.
And one idea I had was that we also have advisory committees. I mean, there are people who are keenly interested in baseball, and get some of the interested parties, basically get the stakeholders very much involved in these meetings, because they've got the details. They know more about, I don't know anything about a 200-foot field or a 300-foot field, but there are people that do know what those requirements are. And we need their expertise. So I'd like to see advisory committees.
Yeah. The analytics of an online poll, the information you can gather from that would be tremendous. So,
Well,
that-
we'll have to create it,
Yeah.
but we can do it, so.
I'm seeing that, I think the EDA is looking for direction from us. I'm just wondering if maybe a 3 or 4 person task force, whatever we want to call it, come up with, the polling questions, whatever, the meeting dates, times, how it's gonna be run, that kind of stuff. Again, and I'm just throwing out ideas, folks. Besides this, change it, morph it to whatever.
John, I really appreciate you and Joe volunteering for that. I think it's a great idea.
Game on, buddy. Game on. Not a problem.
It's a good idea.
But,
We'll make that motion
I don't think you need to make a motion there, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, that's kind of how we kind of divide and conquer now, so I mean, that'd be,
I think you're gonna have to, and then that way, they can report back to the whole board, the board can give its thumbs up, thumbs downs, changes, whatever, and then we can get back to EDA.
I think that'd be very
I
helpful.
think somebody from the EDA would
Yep.
be beneficial to be on that as well, and
Absolutely.
Kay for parks, for sure.
Yeah.
But keep it small to begin with, and then, to your point, Lisa, then the advisory people will be invited in. But we have to have an organization first to get this going, and then you can get bigger into that.
I like that approach, and I would say Skip Weiss has really been taking the lead for the EDA on this. I mean, with Skip's background, not just as an attorney, but for the world's largest construction company. He has tremendous expertise in, major project development. And so I'm so grateful that we have an EDA that every one of them brings a certain talent to our board, and we're trying to take advantage of those talents, depending on what we're working on, so. And Skip's obviously got that expertise.
so
As I said.
maybe our action is, John, that we discuss who we want to have as part of that group on our end. Lisa, you guys could choose whoever, and we can kind of make that ad hoc.
Do you have any suggestions, April, as well?
My mind just goes back to the community visioning efforts that we did, which was, I think, good to avoid a misstep, which was to get community input early on, because the park really belongs to them.
Exactly.
And so then you could kind of know who to pull into your advisory committee based on, what the top needs and desires are, how to use the park. Which you could do with a survey or
I know that Kay was strongly recommending some, actual meetings times, but maybe start with the survey. That'll help put together some preliminary data. I didn't hear you.
I don't know if you remember when Stuart Terrell was.
Yes, I attended.
So we did that, and so then he was able to pull different focus groups together at different locations around the county and the town, to get those ideas from those early on questionnaires that we had at the post office and online and at the library, to kind of eliminate things that we might think that people want, but they really don't. And then we do have community partners, the outside agencies that come to this board for funding of those very programs that would perhaps be able to use the resources at the park.
Can we easily retrieve that information from those meetings? Do we have that still
Yeah,
available?
we still have everything.
Yeah, I'd be
You might
curious
wanna
how that
do a
polling was done.
development.
I'd be curious how the polling was done.
How the polling was done, they had, you could do it online, you could fill it out at one of the sessions, you could, fill out one on a paper form. What are the things that you want from the community? What does the community provide to you already that you feel is not done well, or what are they doing correctly? What the kids want, maybe they want, programs at the park that are for older athletes, not just children. But I think you could get more information, so they feel like they're a part of the development.
We probably ought to get you to the survey that the YMCA did. They did a study, kind of a blind survey
Yeah.
out, a market study to see
Oh,
what
that'd be-
our
that
area
would be
was
valuable.
interested in.
Yeah.
I'll
And that
tell
is
you-
more recent, the one.
Yeah.
that's
Actually,
in
not
the
from the
information.
people in the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that, a lot of what came back with that, a lot of it was more, wasn't necessarily athletics related, but there were pieces in it that you could pull from that. A lot of it was more community development, community centers, early childhood development, but there were pieces on athletics in there that would be good to capture.
Actually, I think I'd find that interesting for some of the other things that we're looking at in workforce development, and which means, education, and who are we trying to educate?
Yeah, we'll get you guys that.
And if you're going to, and also childcare is very important for people to be able to work, that they have a safe place for their kids to be looked after.
Absolutely.
So I'll have Woody follow up with you, John, and we'll figure out next steps. We'd appreciate getting the WISE information, all the information that was done for the visioning, and try to get a game plan together. So maybe we're thinking perhaps May would be the earliest time for public sessions?
Probably so.
Okay,
Not that we can't do some work in between now and then, but.
all right, very good, very good. And I'm sure that Greg would be happy to provide any more information, but I want to say, I think they really stepped up to the plate and gone above and beyond what we originally asked for. And we kept coming back and saying, could you do this? Could you provide us more estimates? And so I really do appreciate that. You guys have put your shoulder to the grindstone on this one, and as Skip Weiss says, we got a lot for our money, so thank you.
So when do we get the 3D model that we can touch and move things? I always wanted to have one of those. So just pick up a building and move.
We get a little 3D modeler thing,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
You can do it on a computer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa, I appreciate it. We'll stay
You're
in
welcome,
touch.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yep, we got there. Lee? We'll work you right in.
I apologize, I was planning on coming to the regular meeting, that was my mistake.
I blamed it on the roads being too icy.
If you would permit me, I'd like to give the board just a quick update. For the new board members, my name is Lee McKnight, I'm the Saluda Residency Administrator for VDOT. Just a quick update for the board. I did want to mention a couple things. There's a couple projects that we have coming up that you'll see some work ongoing. There's a pipelining project on Route 17 at Corrette, southbound. That's supposed to begin sometime in spring, late spring. There's an old corrugated metal pipe that needs to be lined and repaired there. And so that'll be good to get that done. There's a slope repair on Route 17 southbound also in Dunsville, the Dunsville area that needs to be repaired. The timing of that is still to be determined. We're trying to get a right of entry from the property owner at that location to do some of that work. There was a supervisor's request previously for tree trimming on Route 639, Laurel Springs Road. I did want to mention that that is on the tree trimming schedule for this year. In fact, the tree trimming schedule in Essex County in particular is quite robust. It's the largest one we have in the entire residency, and it's needed. Over 80 miles of shoulder miles of tree trimming this year upcoming, so that'll be good. It's quite a big program this year for tree trimming in Essex County.
When does that start?
Typically in spring through the summer, and this one is big, so you could probably see it going through the entire summer this year.
While they up there, while they up there, they can roll down the other side of the road there on, Occupation Road, which leads to Hustle Road, and cut this vine that's been busting people's windshield out too. I've been called them before, they
Oh.
haven't touched it.
Cut the vines on
Yes, a vine, yes.
Occupation.
It's at the corner of, Hustle Road and Fortune Lane. There's a vine hanging off a tree, and a couple people had to bust, crack their windshields. I'm just waiting for a school bus one.
Okay, Hustle and Fortune, okay. There's a couple additional pipe replacements, smaller pipe replacements on Route 684 Howerton and Route 627 Mount Landing that will occur this spring, summer time period as well. Those will be performed by state forces. The Route 17, deck repair was completed southbound at Mount Landing Creek. That was something that had to happen pretty quickly. And then, speaking of Mount Landing Creek, and I know this is, yeah, I know. So there's a lot going on there. In the short term, I did want to mention we have a meeting actually next week to discuss. They're looking at I guess you would call it a river gauge of some sort that would, when it's filled up, it would trip flashing yellow lights when water is on the pavement. So that's a little bit more of a short-term solution at that location, I realize, but at least it'll give real-time, immediate feedback if that lane does have tidal flooding at that location. In the long term, we just had a meeting with a consultant. They're putting together a report and some recommendations for what to do long-term. Obviously, these are pretty major construction projects that would need to be, funding would need to be identified at this time. There is no funding identified, but this is the first step to that in getting, what needs to happen there, what can happen there, and what are the impacts to folks in that location. I will tell you, all the options that I've seen thus far, there will be substantial impacts to travel on 17 for a time period, but it is a major construction project. And again, funding would still need to be identified, but I think it's a good first step. And with that, I will be happy to take any questions the board may have.
I just got one. Tim. So when does the paving start on 17 South? Cause you go from Hunter's Lake Road up to Farmers Oil Road, you have to get all the way over in the left-hand lane. That road is terrible, all the way down, from there all the way down.
When will it start?
Yes.
But that's completely up to the contractor, but the paving season typically starts in the spring and goes through the summer. So I can't give you a definitive,
Okay.
it'll start on this date.
That's
But that section that you're referring to, southbound Route 17,
Right.
from, I guess it's O'Neill, well, from Occupatia to
Occupation
O'Neill.
Road, yeah, Occupation
That
Road
is
up.
on it, on the schedule.
Right, yeah. You just put a culvert there, so, they just replaced the culvert when they curved it, so, yeah.
Last month, we had a citizen asking about the Mount Landing Bridge, and they
Yep.
were out there. Are they finished there? I know they repaired a few. I don't know if they finished all of the separations that were occurring there.
I'll double check, I believe so, but if, they may have had to pull off early because of
Exactly.
the snow.
That's what I thought. I don't
But I
think
will
they're
double
finished,
check
but
with
double check
that.
on that, okay.
I did forget to mention snow. I don't know how I could have forgotten that, but thank you for reminding me.
I do have one more for you.
Ye-
Clark
yes, sir.
Store Road, there's a hole coming in there.
Yes,
It's a major hole.
Yeah.
People hit it, had a guy hit it and hit a tree. So,
that has been identified. It needs to be dug out,
okay.
and repaired. That is not a simple patch the whole type of project. That's
Okay.
gonna actually need to be dug out.
okay.
Didn't see a report this month. I do read them, I appreciate them, and so if we can get one, even if we get it late, that's fine, I'd like to see it. The citizens, I think I asked you this last year, Lee, about turning lane going into Gwynfield subdivision.
Yes,
They
sir.
have brought that up. What do they need to do something? They've made the request to me to bring up to you. Do we need, as a board, need to do something? What is the next step in this process to move that along?
A turning lane
A
into
turning lane,
Gwynfield.
it's-
So the county can utilize, and I think a turn lane in this particular instance would fall into, you could utilize a funding stream such as secondary six-year plan. The board would need to prioritize that funding for that project. And in this particular case, and I don't want to overpromise, but I think in that location, that would be something that state forces could perform that work. And that would help cut down the cost of a turning lane. Again, I'd have to look at that. It might be dependent on how much right-of-way we have. Are there any utilities in the way? Utilities obviously make projects skyrocket
We
in
can't put
price,
it on
but-
our six-year plan until we have an estimate of what it would cost, so I guess.
Correct, yeah, I can get that
You will
together.
initiate that
I
part
can do
of
that.
it. We'll then decide as a board whether that becomes a priority or not in the six-year plan. That's a start, so. But the cars they're cruising, and when people try to turn on there, they're getting run off the road. So
Okay.
I've literally numerous times get on the shoulder to make that turn anyway. It's just a whole lot safer. So, anyway, but you understand, so yeah, if that's the first step, that's great. Just get back to us so that we know what to do next.
Okay.
So, when will we review our six-year plan again?
Yeah, that's coming up.
That's what I thought,
Ty-
so.
Typically, the public hearings are in May, but they have to occur by June. So the latest is June.
So we would need this by May.
Yeah, I can get that done.
That's what I
No
wanted
problem.
to hear. Thank you.
I have a comment. Thank you for the work you did on Johnville Road over the last several months. That has improved that. I don't know if you saw or if you got reported, but we had like probably at least 4 citizens speak at our January meeting in public session with complaints about the lower end of Grandview Road being flooded.
Okay.
Supervisor Hale probably could speak more to it as well, but they were very adamant about that stretch of road was underwater. I'm not sure what can be done, but I think it's something that ought to be looked at. You have any comments with that?
I mean, I've lived there all my life, and, you know, it's a tidal thing. It's a ditch coming in from the river.
That was gonna be my first
The only way
question.
to fix it would be to raise the road as far as I could see, but
Okay.
it does cause quite a problem down there.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that.
And there's a lot of folks that live in that area,
Yeah.
obviously, so, thank you. Yes, sir.
Board members, anything else for Lee?
And you never want to go through that type of
Oh,
winter storm again,
Mr.
do you?
Magruder, never again, never again. That was,
Because even the people that have been born and raised here, lived their whole life, have never seen that. That's what they said, with that ice coating on top, so. That was rough on you all. We appreciate everything everybody did.
I really want to say thank you for all of the patience with that one. I know that was very, very frustrating. That one was difficult. I mean, we're still dealing with it pretty much 3 weeks after the event happened. So I really do thank for all the patience on that one. That was a tough one.
I saw VDOT trucks on the road today.
we
Yeah,
were
you will
thankful
continue
for-
to see them.
Hitting 50 today and hitting 50 tomorrow.
There
Maybe
you go.
that'll finally put it away, so.
Better than 4.
In case it comes up, and I know that this isn't the fault of VDOT, but whenever we're plowing, whether it's VDOT or contractor or whoever, and you got these entrances, either whether it be a house or a business, I mean, obviously, you get that much ice piled up in front of an entryway or exitway, you know, into a business. If they don't have the equipment to be able to move that much ice out of the way, that becomes problematic. Is there anything that VDOT offers to,
I wish that there was.
like, even throwing something down to help melt it? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we treat the roads, that there might be some spin-off, cast-off that will occur in those locations. But yes, that's a problem. When we push the roads, we push to the right, and we push on a 4-lane divided roadway, we're pushing to the shoulders. And it's really unavoidable in a lot of those locations. But I do understand that.
The snow and stuff is usually not bad, but that much ice, if you don't have like a really big front loader or something, you just weren't gonna move it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we do try to push the shoulders back as far as possible. And I realize that doesn't help all the time, but
I thought you guys did a great job this
Yeah.
year, very, open communications, partnered with us on some needs that we had at Conner Road and our other emergency services needs, and I appreciate what you guys did. People think it should be a clean road, but you guys kept the roads open for our public safety, officials and staff to help the citizens, so I really appreciate that.
I really appreciate it.
And Mark did send in his report.
Okay, all right, I was,
Yeah, you have it.
yeah, Mr. Magruder.
Thank you, thank you.
You ask and you shall receive.
Man, you guys are good.
I do have one more question.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if you can address this, non-snow related. But, being a
Good.
farmer, most of my equipment is fairly wide. When you go down the main roads, the driveways have such a difference in height, and they have potholes, and it is really hard to drive down the edge of that. Is that VDOT's responsibility, or?
So are you talking about the shoulder of the road?
Yeah, it's basically the first 6 or 8 feet of somebody's driveway when they turn off of the pavement. So I'm assuming technically it's still on the VDOT right away.
Yeah, so the normal shoulder section of the road would be the responsibility of, if there's any specific locations, feel free to send those to me and I'll have them address those. But like if it's the normal shoulder section of the road through the entrance, we will maintain that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they have some ornate concrete or something like that, we're not gonna maintain that. But, you know, through that normal shoulder section of the roadway, we do maintain that.
It's, I don't know about going up 17, but if you go up 360 from Tappahannock
Yeah.
to Miller's Tavern, it's pretty rough.
Okay.
I do have one more question for you.
Sure. Let me add to it.
Yeah. Is there ever gonna be a time when VDOT's gonna try to like clean the ditches again? So that we don't have runoff, like in certain spots we have where water run, during the rain, water run across the road into the pond there.
Is there a specific location in
I can't
reference?
tell you the exact number of the house, but it's from Patty Mount Swamp Road in the curve going toward, Occupation to down the hill. It's in
Okay,
the curve right there, and the water washes out several times, all the time, Dan. And
Okay.
just be a big thing if somebody comes around there, they don't know the road, they're hydroplane, they're in the woods, or a school bus, anything.
In which roadway is this again?
It's on Occupation Road.
Okay.
And if you go, what's it called? Patty Mount Swamp Road, to the right, before you get there.
Okay.
It's in the curve right there. It's in that, right when you pass the old church. There's an
Okay.
old church on the right-hand side. You pass the old church in that curve right there.
All right, we'll take a look at that.
All right. We're good, appreciate it.
All
Lee.
right, thank you.
Good.
All right, gentlemen, we have, do we want to go into closed session? We only have 13 minutes, or just want to take a break, and we'll resume back at 7 here. Take a quick 13-minute bio break. All right, with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned to the regular meeting. Save somebody from reading all that.